We've gone from the possible connections between Donald Trump and Russia sounding like a mystery caper to a cooking show.
If the president puts Russian salad dressing on his salad tonight, somehow that's a Russian connection.
Oh, Mr. Spicer, if it were only that simple. Between the various federal agencies involved and the number of past and current advisors in the mix, the investigation into how Russia tried to influence the presidential election in Trump's favor and whether any Trump allies were involved is more like a vat of gumbo than a condiment for a salad. A little history now, so bear with me. Let's begin with this startling admission by FBI Director James Comey before a congressional hearing earlier this month.
I have been authorized by the Department of Justice to confirm that the FBI, as part of our counterintelligence mission, is investigating the Russian government's efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election. And that includes investigating the nature of any links between individuals associated with the Trump campaign and the Russian government, and whether there was any coordination between the campaign and Russia's efforts.
Paul Manafort, once Trump's campaign manager, is one area of concern because of his lobbying efforts in Ukraine for pro-Russia interests and accusations he has a history of communicating with Russians known to U.S. intelligence. Not only is the FBI investigating election tampering, so are the intelligence committees in both chambers of Congress, but it's the House committee, chaired by Trump supporter Devin Nunes, that's been in the news.
Are you going to stay as chairman and run this investigation?
Well, why would I not?
The former dairy farmer is under fire for having given the Trump administration information before sharing it with his committee colleagues. This has fueled calls for the appointment of a special prosecutor. Then there's the situation with Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. The president wants him to head an office with wide-ranging duties, including spurring business development and addressing the opioid crisis. But information has surfaced that Kushner met with a Russian banker appointed by Vladimir Putin during the transition. Now, with all of this going on, there's only been one casualty so far, Michael Flynn, who was National Security Advisor for what seemed like about 15 minutes. He lied to the vice president about talking to the Russian ambassador about policy during the transition, a violation of federal law, and after Flynn left, it was revealed he had also been paid by a Russian TV outlet, something he also lied about. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders probably spoke for a lot of Americans this past Sunday.
What I think the issue right now is, and what the American people want to know, is what relationship, if any, what kind of collusion, if any, there was between the Trump campaign and Russia. If the intelligence committees are unable to do the right thing, we need to go through an independent commission.
And then there are Trump confidants Carter Page, J.D. Gordon, Roger Stone, Michael Cohen, all with admitted or alleged Russian connections. But we're going to have to put them aside for tonight because I've got to be in bed by 10. The American people have watched presidential scandals play out before, Watergate, Monica Lewinsky, to name just two. So does the drip, drip, drip of information here compare, or do Trump supporters have a point when they say Democrats in the media are trying anything to trip them up? Joining me are Evelyn Farkas. She's a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Russia during the Obama administration. Pleasure to meet you, Evelyn. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And Jim Walsh is back. He's a Senior Research Associate at MIT's Security Studies Program. Jim, good to see you, too.
Good to see you.
Evelyn, starting with you. So obviously there's plenty of smoke around this issue of collusion. Based on what you know and the players you know, is it likely there's fire, or it's just, as Spicer said, Russian dressing?
I think that it's not Russian dressing. There's a lot of window dressing, maybe. But anyway, I'll leave the wordplay. The problem is there's a lot of smoke, and there's probably some fire.
Like what?
I am concerned about Paul Manafort in particular. Again, I don't know whether he actually helped Trump wittingly or unwittingly, but the fact that he's so closely associated with these oligarchs who are tied to the Kremlin does cause me a lot of concern.
When you say Trump helped him wittingly or unwittingly, meaning did he work or collude with Russians to help Trump get elected wittingly or unwittingly?
Correct. So there are a lot of questions, but I also really looked very closely at Director Comey's posture, his face.
What'd you read into it?
I mean, I felt that he really felt the gravity of the situation, and I don't think he would be comporting himself, he wouldn't be acting that way if he didn't feel like there's a lot of smoke and maybe a little bit of fire.
But he probably wouldn't have said any of it if he hadn't done what he did to Hillary Clinton during the end of the campaign. Don't you think it was a quid pro quo kind of thing to some degree, or no?
No, I think the guy's a straight shooter.
Okay.
I mean, whether you like what he did or not, the judgment calls he made, I think he's a straight shooter.
No, we should be clear. There's no doubt. Even Donald Trump admitted in a word a month or two ago that, yes, the Russians tried to influence the election.
Absolutely.
Dick Cheney actually called it a potential act of war, as John McCain, I guess, did a while ago. Where are you on this potential, is there more there?
Well, let me start by trying to sound reasonable before I set my hair on fire and start screaming.
Do that really briefly.
Okay. We've had lots of investigations. How many times was Benghazi investigated? So simply having an investigation does not mean you're going to get an outcome. And sometimes things happen, but you can't prove them.
Well,
sometimes
the FBI director didn't make statements in those 17 whatever number of hearings. Is that
exactly. But I'm just saying we're going to have to let these investigations follow the facts. And sometimes there's activity there, but you can't prove it, right? These investigations end with inconclusive but suggestive findings.
Are you about to get irresponsible?
I'm about to get irresponsible.
Ahead.
It looks terrible. I think it looks terrible, and I think you mentioned historical analogies. I cannot think of a modern presidency. Yes, we've had South Koreans playing with the Congress or other foreign powers playing in the Congress, but to have our long-term adversary try to tip the election, which everyone agrees to, and now having at least the appearance of potentially troubling connections. That's bad.
Who do we depend on? I mean, I tried to detail a little bit what's going on with this House committee. There was also supposed to be a hearing with Sally Yates, former Assistant Attorney General, who most reporters thought was going to probe more deeply into the Flynn-Russian connection. That hearing didn't happen. I think he's pretty much disgraced himself. Some Republicans in the House have said the Senate should do it. John McCain says a special committee. What's the appropriate way? Should we be left to the FBI and don't worry about Congress? How do we get to the bottom of this?
No, I mean, the FBI has to do what they're doing. That's the right and proper thing to do. They have to investigate this. I would say that we need an independent, bipartisan commission. But that doesn't mean that the Senate can't continue doing what they're doing, because there is a bit to the argument that they're already starting. They've started interviewing people. They have the data already there. They have the security clearances. So if you start a new commission, it'll take a little time. But I think the thing about the commission is it's done much more transparently. I was executive director of the Graham Talent WMD Commission. And we had public hearings. We actually had a hearing in New York City. It was about terrorists getting WMD and whether the administration was doing a good enough job. I think that it helped because we talked to the American people about what we were doing. We had witnesses in front of us. We had the mayor come and talk about it. So I think that while an ongoing investigation is occurring in the FBI and the intelligence committees are doing their work, an independent investigation can also do work and educate the public.
Can I be irresponsible like you were for a minute?
Sure.
Manafort has said he's willing to testify, is anxious to it. So is Page.
Yeah.
So is Roger Stone. One person who's off that list who we've heard nothing from is Michael Flynn. Should we read anything into the fact that no committee chair says Flynn's about to testify? General Flynn is not voluntary. In fact, he's almost gone dark. We've heard nothing from him of late. Should we read anything into that or no?
I would hold off on drawing a conclusion. They could be in negotiations with him now about the conditions. In other words,
committee people.
Yes, could be negotiating with him now
could
on
the
FBI
FBI
terms and conditions under which
be involved in negotiations with him now about?
Absolutely, but obviously you'd want to keep a big wall of separation between those two investigations. But sure, so I would not jump on that. I think we have to give this time. I'm encouraged by the way the Senate has handled this. Evelyn's worked on Capitol Hill. She knows that, for the most part, the folks on the intelligence committees are supposed to be the adults. They're supposed to be able to act, if not.
And the Senate members have acted that way, as you suggest,
exactly,
by the way.
as the way they should be.
Particularly in contrast
Whereas
with
the House thing has been a disaster.
You have been in the news yourself on a related thing based on an interview you did on MSNBC with Mika Brzezinski earlier this month. And
only in the dark news.
Well, but let me quote you in part, and if you feel it's unfair because you said a lot to say, you'll amplify. I was urging my former colleagues, and by the way, you left in 2015, we should say.
On Halloween,
of
2015.
Perfect, is it not? I was urging my former colleagues, and frankly speaking, the people on the Hill, to get as much intelligence as you can before President Obama left the administration, because I had a fear that the Trump folks, if they found out how we knew what we knew about the Trump staff dealing with Russians, that they would try to compromise those sources and methods. Critics have said, and supporters of Trump, this is the smoking gun that suggests, in fact, there was at least a will, if not a way, to do the surveillance of Donald Trump or people in his operation that his supporters are suggesting. You're shaking your head no. Why doesn't it mean that?
Because I never mentioned surveillance. I never mentioned leaking. I never mentioned hacking.
What did you mean?
What I was worried about was we had that summer, remember, last summer, all these reports about the Russians hacking, and then the information got to WikiLeaks. At the same time, the newspapers were reporting about Trump confidants, Trump advisors, going back and forth to Moscow, talking to Russians. And all of the reporting was indicating, again, it was the first sign of the smoke. And so I was worried after the election, once I saw that, okay, Trump was going into the White House, he would now be the custodian of the classified information.
And they might just,
however, the other place where they can read classified information is on Capitol Hill. So all I was saying to the Obama people and to the people on the Hill was make sure you share the data, the facts, whatever facts you have on this. And it wasn't advocating for anybody tapping, leaking, spying, anything of that nature.
So you don't need anybody to start
I
the car
was saying
for you.
Congress needs to be involved. Congress needs to be involved.
We only have 1 minute left.
Yes.
Really, what's the next sign that mere mortals, unlike experts, should be looking for to suggest there is some there? What's the next thing that might break that would suggest to the American people somebody in the Trump administration's got big troubles here, starting with you?
Well, it might be the people they interview, or it might be documents that become available through the process of the investigation. But my guess is, I mean, these are the Intel committee, so they're probably not going to release a lot of stuff. You know, I don't know this for a fact, you may know, Evelyn, but I assume that the Intel community is continuing its investigation and attempt to confirm that dossier that was from the summer.
From a couple of months ago.
Right. At one point, one of these is going to end, and at that moment, if they say they're wrapping up, then I would hold on to my seat.
What's the public piece we might see? Anything?
I don't know. I'm more worried about the policy, so I would watch to see, okay, I mean, there's a question of Trump supporters, but how does that affect our policy? Because that would be the more serious thing. If the president and the people around him somehow were affected by either the contacts they had with Russians, or with
may
the
have
advisors.
something on him or whatever.
You know, somehow. I want to see what they do. There's an oligarch called Dmitry Firtash. He's being held in Vienna, Austria. We asked for him to be extradited to the United States, we being the U.S. government, but under the last administration. He was set to be released to us. The Spanish came in with another case against him. I would look to see how the Trump administration handles that case.
Fair enough, Evelyn. Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you
Thanks so
very
much
much
for your time. Jim, it's great to see you.
Take care.
Really appreciate it.